The snow fell softly that December evening, the kind that quiets a city instead of covering it. Along Cedar Lane, it dusted parked cars, old brick buildings, and the wide steps of St. Mark's Community Church, where warm golden light spilled through stained glass windows like an open invitation. Inside, faint carols drifted through the air as people gathered for Christmas Eve service. Outside, on the top step near the heavy wooden doors, Lydia Moore pulled her worn coat tighter around herself. The coat had once been navy blue, but years of winters had faded it to gray. Beside her rested a battered suitcase with a broken wheel, everything she owned packed inside. In her hands was a folded piece of paper. She had been writing by the glow of the stained glass, but snowflakes had smudged the ink. "Dear Mom," she whispered, her voice barely steady. "I'm trying." "I really am." Lydia's mother had been gone for a year now, and since then, life had slowly unraveled. Teaching music at an elementary school had once filled her days with laughter and song, but when her mother fell ill, Lydia left work to care for her. The illness moved faster than anyone expected, and when it was over, Lydia was left with grief, debt, and nowhere to land. One lost paycheck became many. Then came the eviction notice. Footsteps crunched through the snow at the bottom of the steps. A man and a little girl were approaching. The man, Michael Reed, wore a dark wool coat and carried himself with quiet responsibility. His daughter Sophie, 7 years old, skipped beside him, her pink hat bouncing with each step. Michael noticed Lydia immediately and instinctively tightened his grip on Sophie's hand. "Stay close," he said gently. "It's cold." But Sophie slowed, her eyes fixed on the woman sitting alone on the steps. "Daddy," she whispered, "that lady looks really sad." Michael hesitated. It would be easy to keep walking, to follow the familiar script of service and carols and home. But Sophie let go of his hand before he could answer and climbed the steps. Lydia didn't notice until a small shadow fell across her letter. She looked up to see a little girl staring at her with open, serious eyes. For a moment, neither spoke. Snow fell quietly around them. Then Sophie did something simple and brave. She opened her arms wide and said, "I think you need a hug. Can I hug you?" Lydia's breath caught. No one had asked her that in months. Slowly she nodded. Sophie stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Lydia's shoulders. At first, Lydia froze, unsure how to receive something so gentle. Then her shoulders dropped, and her hands trembled as they rested against the child's coat. Silent tears slipped down her cheeks. From behind them, Michael removed his scarf and gently placed it around Lydia's shoulders. "There's hot cocoa inside," he said quietly. "You don't have to stay. Just come warm up." Lydia wanted to refuse, she always did. But Sophie slipped her hand into Lydia's, and that was enough. Inside the church hall, warmth replaced the cold. Cocoa steamed on folding tables, and cinnamon bread filled the air with comfort. Lydia sat near the fireplace, hands wrapped around a cup that felt almost unreal in its warmth. Sophie leaned against her side like they'd known each other forever. They talked quietly. Lydia shared pieces of her story. Michael shared how Sophie's mother had passed away years earlier, how grief had taught them both to be careful with their hearts. Later, as the service ended, Sophie looked up at her father and asked, "Can she come with us tonight?" "She's cold," the words hung in the air. Michael looked at Lydia, her thin coat, her tired eyes, the way she held herself as if ready to disappear. "We have a spare room," he said finally. "Just for tonight." That night turned into days into weeks. Lydia helped Sophie with homework, taught her piano, and slowly found her footing again. Michael found that the house no longer felt hollow. Laughter returned. Music returned. Life returned. Months later, snow fell again on Cedar Lane. Lydia stood at the same church steps, this time holding Michael's hand while Sophie bounced beside them, smiling proudly. Sometimes it isn't grand gestures that change a life. Sometimes it's a small voice in the snow saying, "I think you need a hug."